and welcome to the WREVA Electrifying News April edition. Here we are on the 24th of April, and joining me as per usual, we have Mr. Eric Stevens joining us from the Listowel area. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Mark.
Excellent, excellent. And joining us from downtown Kitchener, we have Mr. Ian Graham joining us. How are you today, sir?
Working on my tan. I think I got a bit of it today.
Today was a great day to be in Southern Ontario, that is for sure.
Yep.
But I'm understanding that Tuesday, Wednesday may not be quite as good.
It's going to change. Yeah.
Welcome to springtime in Ontario.
Yeah.
The fluctuations will come fast and furious.
Yeah, hopefully this is the last phase of third winter.
Is it third or fourth? I lost count.
Yeah, we don't want another dumping of a foot of snow, that's for sure. But
No.
who knows? Who knows what's in the cards? We'll have to see. But at least I have to say it is getting better. It has been getting better. So hopefully we're on our way out with winter, and it'll be nice weather from here on out, as we all hope. But foregoing that, we've got some electrifying news this month, and we wanted to share it with you out there. If you haven't already, please give us a thumbs up on the video, press that subscribe button, and you'll be notified every time we upload a new video to the WREVA channel. With that, I turn it over to you, Ian, to get things started.
All right. So the first thing that we were talking about is something that just was announced in the past week. That's about Transport Canada expanding their iZev program, which I think is exciting because we're talking about pickup trucks, SUVs, minivans, the people who want something a little bit bigger.
Right. So we've moved into a scenario where they've added basically another category. As you remember in the past, the federal iZev program that they had in place allowed people to get a $5,000 federal credit right off the price of their vehicle at the dealership. And that, of course, had caveats in place. The vehicle couldn't be over, base vehicle couldn't be over $50,000, and it couldn't be above $60,000 in order to qualify for this this particular program. The only change they had in the past iZev program was that if you had a vehicle that could seat 7 or more, which of course qualified the Windsor-made Pacifica, that would qualify, and the price was slightly higher for that vehicle. So that was the only caveat. But with this new program that will begin April 25th, which is just tomorrow actually, they've expanded the iZev program to have an actual minivan / light duty pickup / SUV category. And that category allows people to spend a little bit more, have a little bit larger of a minimum price. I believe instead of 50, it's now 55,000 for that particular category. And of course, the regular sedan, if you like it, category remains the same at 50. So this is something that now we have two categories. But the real thing that is new to this program is that they're introducing basically some sort of a sales target that so many EVs have to be sold within a time period. And they're rolling this out as well with this new program. And this is going to incentivize manufacturers to have to sell a percentage of EVs within a time period. And of course, going forward, most likely they're going to ramp up these amounts over time as they see the returns start to come in. So, for example, Canada is looking to get to a zero emission by 2030? I'm sorry, 2035. They'd like to be at 100% zero emission. Yep. And they're stepping it up by saying in 2030 we'd like to be at a 60% position, and before 2030 we would like to be in a position just underneath that 60%. So They are putting it in a three-phase type arrangement and going to get people, the manufacturers, to understand that there could be penalties involved as time goes on if manufacturers don't reach a certain threshold of sales in EVs. So this is kind of similar to the program that ran in California, as well as I understand runs in Quebec. That there are percentages attached to EV sales, and the manufacturers are required to get to those percentages in order to avoid penalties for the manufacturer if they don't reach those numbers. So this certainly incentivizes the manufacturer to get involved and make sure that those EVs do get out in the quarters that they expect them to get out in, so they can avoid penalties that would be charged to them. So I wanted to prompt Eric and Ian and see if you think that this is a good plan, or if this is something that still needs to be massaged.
I got to say, I'm indifferent on this one. I'm a little split. There's good and bad to this, I see. I think part of the good in this, of course, is this will open up a bunch of vehicles that are very popular segment. Right now, one of the most popular vehicle segments in the marketplace today is the mid-sized crossover type segment. And so when you look at EVs in that segment today, many of them are priced right around the old threshold of the price point. Where this is good is this will open up some other vehicles. I've actually, if you go to the Government of Canada iZev website today, they've actually updated the website with the vehicles that now qualify under the new rules. So that website has been updated. So now you can see vehicles like the Volvo XC40 Recharge, the Mustang Mach-E, the Audi Q4 e-tron. These vehicles now qualify for the $5,000 rebate. So that'll certainly help expand sales and create more models that are available and more attainable to consumers. However, on the other side, and the concern that I have is you have vehicles like the Kia EV6, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and the Volkswagen ID4. They were very clearly priced in the Canadian marketplace to hit the previous $45,000 threshold in Canada. So that threshold at $45,000 was really good, because if you look at, say, a Kia EV6 in the United States, it's priced at $42,000 US. But in Canada, they priced it at $45,000 to hit the rebate. But now that they've raised that limit, now Kia might turn around and raise their prices as well too, to better accommodate that. So it was clear that they were subsidizing their vehicle for the Canadian marketplace to get into the Canadian marketplace. Now there's going to be less pressure to do that.
Right.
Yeah. I can totally see that, Eric, that can be a bit of an issue, and I could see the consumer who might be watching that particular vehicle suddenly like, hey, wait a minute, the price is more. What's going on? So it'll be interesting to see how these manufacturers do respond to these aspects. In terms of the push, if you don't do this stuff, there might be penalties. That type of thing. Let's see what happens. I mean, because the Canadian government has to also be careful with some of these aspects too, because they do know that the auto manufacturers employ quite a number of people, and there can be some push and pull on this as well. I think having zero emissions is a great thing. And I want to see that. In fact, 2035 to me is still too late. But that being said, look at what's happening in Norway, where they're hoping for 2025 for 100%, and they're already close to that even this spring. So that could also be one of those things where the consumer will turn around and not only demand, to the auto manufacturer, but even for that matter, the Canadian government, where no, we don't want anything to do with getting a non-zero emission vehicle. Like, everything's going towards this direction. And I think the other quick thing too is by 2030, how many more people will have been in an EV and had it for a few years, and those who are still not certain about the stuff, the technology will have changed, and the neighbor who got an EV and might have told them some stuff about it that might have deferred that other person to buy the EV, because that those solutions might come about, and then there's that landfall of people like, okay, we're in, we want to get into this now. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. between, I would say, by 2035. I think even by 2030, we're going to see some interesting stuff happening.
Yeah, just I don't know. It's something about the percentage thing makes sense to me, in the fact that you could drop really all the other price points if you had the manufacturers required to sell X amount of vehicles, or what percentage of vehicles over a period of time. Because like it happens in California, if the dealers find that they're not selling the electric vehicles and find that they're not going to hit their quarterly target, then what happens is they turn around and they discount the EVs to the consumers. So they're picked up more rapidly, and they get those different points towards their particular manufacturer point list. So, and it's kind of self-regulating in the fact that if EVs are on an upswing, then they don't have to really push with incentives. But if they happen to be not selling or pushing from a number of dealerships, they do that in order to, again, reach those goals. So I don't know. I don't know if it would work in Ontario. I don't know if it makes sense. But this is going to be a slightly different thing, and we'll be able to watch that over the next year and see if it makes a difference.
For sure. All right. So, and here we go. We're talking about, the growth from now to 2030 and 2035. And here we, I think, you know what? We have a wrong slide. My apologies. How the heck did I get in there? Sorry, Eric. I can help you cut that out. Okay. All right, going on from this slide here, let's talk about Canada on a whole other level. Canadians are among the world's worst carbon emitters, and this article from the CBC was talking about what we can do about this. It was produced by the Hot or Cool Institute, and it compared 10 countries that represented different variations of income levels. And those countries: Canada, Finland, United Kingdom, Japan, China, Turkey, South Africa, Brazil, India, and Indonesia. And of the countries studied, Canada had the worst per capita record by far. And the areas that they were looking at that could definitely help, Canada is, of course, we enjoy our meat. So when you're dealing with beef and pork, and the amount of agriculture and emissions used that way. But of course, fossil fuel cars. Canada, we're really known as, SUVs and trucks, Ford F-150 being one of the best selling vehicles that we have here. And then the other aspect, of course, is the large houses and the amount of high energy consumption that we have. So I brought this up because we just had Earth Day, and I kind of looked at this, and this kind of came up around the same time, and I think it would be nice to see Canadians do a little bit more in terms of helping to get these emissions reduced down, because I hear that constantly. Oh, well, we're Canada. We don't have anywhere close to the emissions to other countries in the world. But the reality is we are actually some of the worst. And it would be nice to see, we just talked about with the electric car and the new incentives, for auto manufacturers and consumers, like, the government is putting out. But we need to go a little further beyond that. And, it's also too, keeping our house heated is another factor, of course, but we also have solutions that way. Eric, I know, of course, you've been dealing with an air source heat pump for the last few years and had some good success with that. But I sort of brought this up just I thought it was interesting. This came out around the same time as Earth Day. And, it would be nice to see Canadians actually, take this a little more serious and realize that, we're doing some things, but we could do a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, and I agree with you there, Ian. I mean, naturally, you look at the countries at the high end of that to the low end, there's a few factors that are going on. One is, Canada is a big country with a low population density. So we're the second largest country in the world with only 36 million people. So as a result, and we're a naturally fairly cold country. So as a result of that, we are going to be expending more energy to heat our homes, and we're also going to be expending more energy to transport goods from one place to another. We're going to be expending more energy to travel one place to another. So Canada naturally is going to have a high carbon footprint per capita compared to more densely populated, warmer countries. That being said, there's no reason. You can see Finland there on the map is still quite a bit lower than us, and I don't see why we can't at least be closer to Finland or better. And I think that also has a double-edged sword too. Canada is a big country with a low population density. That also means we don't see the problems as apparently some other countries do as well too. And when you're in a much more densely populated country, you start to see the impacts of human intervention much more so than we do. In our case, because we're so spread out, we have so much space to work with. We have a tendency to waste it, waste those resources and waste those things. We don't realize how good we have it with water. We don't realize how good we have it with many resources that are at our disposal, or even space, and how in many countries, space is at much more of a premium than it is here in Canada. So in many ways, most Canadians don't realize how good we have it. And because of that, we also are much more wasteful, naturally wasteful because of that. So there's certainly massive room for improvement that we can make here in Canada.
Yeah, I'm hoping the transportation sector can really step it up for us, because as Eric has mentioned, there are great distances between our city centers, and we have to travel those distances in order to move products and communicate with our other Canadians. So it's something that is inherently part of our energy spend, and I don't see that going away. But of course, electrification of the transportation system can definitely put a dent in that. So I hope that can be one of our silver bullets to maybe move up in this listing shown here today.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, just a quick little thing. I think that's just kind of make us aware, it's like, I think sometimes we like to think we're doing really well and great and pat ourselves in the back, but there is always more that we can do. And the transport part, if you look in that graph as well, and like both of you have mentioned, Canada's a vast country, and I think that is a big part of the aspect of that too, with our emissions. So, yeah. All right. So does London need more fast charging stations for electric vehicles?
Yeah, Don Miller, who's an EV advocate, has been for several years. Don is part of the London Electric Vehicle Association, and he had penned a letter to London City Hall indicating that he believes that London, Ontario is missing out because of their lack of level 3 charging within the city. And Don wants to see more level 3 or DC charging that's available within the city of London, and he feels that will allow EV drivers to spend more time and, in effect, more money within the city. So having dinners, going shopping, things of that nature that will allow someone to spend some more time, spend some more money around the city. Now, the City of London replied to his letter and had indicated that the cost is prohibitive when it comes to installing these DC fast chargers within the city. We've heard pricing anywhere between 100K to 300K per unit. So depending on what electrical infrastructure is available at the site and what equipment manufacturer you're going with, how many plugs you're going to provide, all can escalate that amount quite a bit. So it's not, it's not just as easy as like level 2s where they were just a few, $10,000 here and there. Here we're talking up to 300K per charger. So the city certainly has a point when it's trying to be of course, spend taxpayer money responsibly. And Don has indicated that he feels that they should add to it. And I'm kind of two minds here. When it comes now to DC fast charger in the world where we are today, okay, 10 years ago it was different. Even 7 years ago it was different. But today, the vehicles that are being sold have a lot of range that come with them typically. Mm-hmm. So you're getting in the area of somewhere between, let's say, 300 and 500 kilometers of range in a newer EV. So I'm seeing there may be a change when it comes to DC fast charging, that really what DC fast charging is going to be used for in the future is just getting from region or city to city. It's going to be, my thought is it's going to be just a transportation between population centers, as opposed to having it at a mini mall or a movie theater or someplace, a restaurant. I really don't see the investment of up to $300,000 to put it at a regional shopping mall if it's not on a viable transportation route that people are traveling between city centers. And I wanted to put it to the both of you as to how you see this issue. Certainly, as EV advocates, all of us are here. We'd like to see more charging abilities and more options available to us, but there does come a point, I believe, where there are diminishing returns based on the amount of money you have to spend. What do you guys think on this?
Yeah, I partially. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I quickly, the way I look at it this way is that the Rangers are playing the London Knights, and we go down to cheer on the Rangers, and we can get away with a level 2 charger to get back home, no problem. Worst case scenario, the London Knights beat the Rangers. That's not going to happen. And they suddenly have to play Sault Ste. Marie. So the people from Sault Ste. Marie probably would really like those level 3 chargers. But in all honesty, and Eric, I agree with you. I'm originally from the London area, and London's connected by, of course, the 401 and to a point 402. And I agree with you that the level 3 chargers, they're expensive. And I think you're probably better to look at it around those areas, because when people are traveling, especially long distances, and do need that full, top speed charge, it's better, I think, to have it close to the 401, 402. At a mall, and for that matter, the London Knights at the arena there, it's hard to say. And I can understand the city's hesitancy, because the taxpayer will also look at it and question the validity of doing this, and whether the economic sort of comeback with the somebody coming down to London for a hockey game and dinner and everything else is going to solidify and validate that level 3 charger. I can see where there's issues.
Yeah, and going back to Mark's comment, I partially agree with Mark. And I'll say that for the average person who can charge at home, that is true. So you'll have situations where people who can charge at home, they'll be charging at home unless they have to use a DC fast charger. In that case, they're going to be using it only to travel between regions. That being said, London is actually quite better served today than they were even just a few years ago. They now have IV stations just off the 401 in Wellington. The 401 en route stations now have IV stations. They have Electrify Canada station just off the 401 there now as well too, plus a number of flow stations. London is actually, on a per capita basis, is actually far better served than even Kitchener-Waterloo right now from a DC fast charging standpoint. That being said, there are improvements that could be made. They have one flow charger at the Masonville Mall. I would like to see 2 there for redundancy. Things like that could definitely use some improvements. But from a standpoint of people who cannot charge at home, so people who are live in apartment buildings or communities such as that, it might be good to see a few more community DC fast chargers at grocery stores or something like that, to better facilitate those types of consumers, to encourage them to move to electrification. And so I could certainly see some room for improvement there as well too. But right now, I mean, I would say today the DC fast charging needs are reasonably well met. Now, obviously, as electric vehicles proliferate and more EVs get out there, there will be a bigger demand for DC fast charging as well too, as that happens. So, and I'm hoping that there's a sort of, as the demand of one side comes on, the others will follow, basically. So as more EVs come out, more DC fast charging will follow. But that being said, I've used the DC fast chargers in London many times. My family lives in the Chatham-Kent area, so I'm going through London all the time, and I've never seen the stations full in that area. So so I would say right now they're not drastically underserved. I would just say there's a few areas where a little bit of extra redundancy in case the station goes down would be nice. And that's what I would like to see probably in the London area.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Go Rangers.
Yeah.
All right. Now, just quickly on when I saw this article before with Don, and it just came out this past weekend from the Globe and Mail, and it was a journalist who got the Ioniq 5 and went from Toronto to Ottawa, and he was making the point of, his charging is advertised, at 150 kilowatts, X amount of kilometers in this many minutes, that type of stuff. And it was just his experience that he found from Toronto to Ottawa. Some of it some of the stations were down, but the big thing, of course, was like, he wasn't getting 150 kilowatts. It was like, 60 kilowatts or less. And but let's point this out with this article. From what I understand, this was done in February, and it's something that the public, I think, needs to be aware of. Is like, ideal conditions. That's the big thing. It's like, yes, your car can, under ideal conditions, travel 500 kilometers, but in reality, we don't know how much of a lead foot you are, and how much speeding you plan to do once you find the fun with the car. And two, it's like, where do you live? Are you in Saskatchewan on the prairies where there's lots of flat land and you're not dealing with going up and down hills? Just going from Kitchener to Toronto is downhill. I've always noticed my range is so much better than coming back home, because now you're going back more of an incline back up. I especially noticed that with the Volt, because the Volt always, the Gen 1 Volt that I had, from Kitchener, I would say the furthest I ever got on a charge was Pearson. But from Toronto back to Kitchener, much different scenario. So this, it's an interesting article, but let's be honest about the reality of things.
Yeah, and I think there's a few things going on here as well too. Part of it is education, just how EVs work, and their, what are the limitations and what are not. Part of it is technological as well too. Different manufacturers are taking different approaches to this as well too. Most manufacturers do publish ideal conditions, and they put a lot of caveats in their language as well too. So, like for example, Hyundai Ioniq will say it can charge from 10 to 80% when connected to a 350 kilowatt charger, even though the car actually charges at 240 kilowatts peak. But that's, again, under ideal temperature conditions, if the pack is at the right temperature and all those things as well too. Now, I say there's technological solutions to that right now. Some manufacturers out there have the option now to, when you navigate to a station, that they can precondition the battery. And there's a few manufacturers doing that. Tesla does it. GM's new Ultium vehicles, the Hummer EV, the Lyriq does it. The Volvo XC40 does it. I believe now the Jaguar I-Pace does it as well too. And Volkswagen's rolling out an update that their ID4 now does it as well. So manufacturers are now starting to work in preconditioning into the battery when you navigate to a DC fast charger. And some manufacturers are even giving the option to manually precondition your battery to get optimal DC fast charging. But that takes a little bit of education as well too on the consumer side. And then there's even the flip side as well too, is different EVs charge differently as well. You have some vehicles like the Teslas that charge very fast on the low end of the state of charge curve, but then slow down significantly when they get above 50% state of charge, versus something like an Audi e-tron, which has a very flat charging curve and charges fast all the way to 80%. And the approach that Audi there took is that they saved quite a bit of buffer at the top end of the car in order to allow for that to give a more linear aspect so that the car feels more natural to the average consumer, versus now some other manufacturers have to do a bit more education to the consumer to say, when you're on a road trip, don't charge beyond this level. Just charge to here and move on if you can. So there's, I think, a learning curve going on in the world to see what works best with different consumers and what doesn't. And different manufacturers are trying different things. And I think at some point there will be a proliferation where everybody will sort of consolidate into the same realm of what the consumer wants. You know, what does the average consumer want? What do people want? What do people expect? And I think we're getting there. So there's a few solutions to that, and manufacturers are rolling out solutions to that, and some manufacturers are doing it faster than others.
And as we had said jokingly at the start of this podcast, that this reporter should be sent a note that being in Ontario, he should know there is no ideal time in February in Ontario. So
yeah,
yeah.
So definitely charging in the cold is one of those conditions that we know will cause different speeds at different charging stations. So that is the way it is when you have a four seasons climate as we do here in Ontario.
Mm-hmm. And in all honesty, too, the gas vehicles also react totally different between hot and cold as well. You know, there's definitely inconsistency that way as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right. This is an interesting, you know, I'm looking at this going, geez, I could do van life in this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, hopefully GM will increase production capacity even beyond this. But so basically what's happened is that the CAMI plant in Ingersoll actually right now is shut down. And they're retooling the facility as we speak right now. And they're expected to be back up and running in November, mass producing the Brightdrop van. So the Brightdrop van is in production today. GM is subcontracted with another company to produce at low volume some Brightdrop vehicles that have been going out to FedEx right now. But the CAMI plant's going to be up and running soon, producing the EV600 and the EV410. And there's rumors of a EV1000 coming as well too. That should be in production in November. So the initial production is supposed to be 30,000 units, but as GM gets more battery capacity online, they're saying by mid-decade, about 2025, they should be producing over 60,000 units a year out of the Ingersoll facility.
Wow.
Well, this last mile solution or medium delivery is certainly something that the industry is sorely missing at this point. Having some vehicles being able to especially do package delivery, as indicated here with FedEx and Walmart, is something that we could all benefit from. So hopefully this will be a great testing ground and will allow GM to understand the market a little bit more, and maybe work even some extra improvements into the vehicles. I think with these companies and their fleet management groups, they're definitely going to be providing GM with valuable feedback as to how these vehicles operate in an 8, 10, or 12-hour day. It's going to be something that people that are making EV this information will be invaluable to them as it starts to flow in.
Mm-hmm. Now, and one quick thing, I just sort of thinking back to the slide that we had about the Canada and its emissions. I could see this area being a huge aspect of. They're talking about transportation. I could see this being a huge positive for emission drop, because how many of these vehicles right now, on their deliveries are idling, depending what they're dropping off. So there could be that aspect of it. But just also if they're dealing with major city centers, the stop and go all the time, it's just not efficient that way at all. We all know that electric vehicles, they, a lot of times you hear like, oh, they're great for cities, and one of the big reasons is because they, the stop and go is not the same because they're not idling. So I could see this be a really good aspect of it as well. And you know what, it's going to be interesting. I was kind of wondering where's Amazon in this aspect of it, but Amazon, as far as I understand, are doing a few other different things.
Yeah, well, Amazon's got that big investment in Rivian right now, actually.
Right.
And and they're supposed to be building a whole bunch of electric vans through Rivian for Amazon.
Yeah, 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so all these things are great steps.
Mm-hmm. And maybe considering the proximity of Ingersoll to the Waterloo region, maybe we can convince GM to have a REVA Events electric van,
Yeah. Oh. Now, are these vans, again, are the average range is what, 150, 200 kilometers still?
No, 400.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
nice.
GM's publishing under normal use as a delivery van, they'll be able to do 400 kilometers range.
Wow.
And of course, with the enhancements, they believe it'll even go beyond that as time goes along. So this is where that feedback is going to be. That real world data coming in is going to pay some dividends in research as to how these vehicles can be expanded.
Yeah, and there was an article that came out just the other day about a guy who did a ride along in a Brightdrop van on a range test, and they actually did about 450 kilometers in a full route, and it was mixed use. They're going up to 120 kilometers an hour on the freeway and a few other things too. So these vehicles seem to be performing quite well. FedEx seems to be pretty happy with them so far.
Yeah. I can see the van life people are hearing that lovely number, 400 plus kilometers, and going like, yes, I want one now. Yeah, so that's awesome. Great stuff. All right. So this is interesting that, Eric, as you were mentioning to us just before we started the podcast, with trying to get parts with your own company. And of course, this is also affecting people who want to get into an electric car. I recently went to a dealer and was told that, it could be like 8 months to a year if you put your money down now before you really have a good chance of actually getting this car. And of course, there's the interest is one thing. Gas prices have definitely, made a lot people a lot much more interested in this. And then of course there's also the chip shortage for that. And, even Tesla, who, kind of has gotten on with their own parts and sourcing and getting parts. They're even saying between 3 months to 1 year. And I've just for the heck of it gone on and just, typed in different configurations just to see. And, oh yeah, it's you're kind of waiting a little bit. So one other quick thing is, because of high gas prices, the consumer is that much more interested in electric cars. This is a picture from Denver, and it has a gas station as well as charging stations. And there's quite the difference there between gas and electricity. Quite the difference.
It's not in the same measuring scale, but you're definitely seeing something that would really make someone's eyes pop if they thought it was an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you could on the bottom, if you could put home charge off peak, for one more, this is how cheap it is.
I've never seen that at a fuel station that actually had the electric price stated as well. That's cool to see.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Maybe that's actually something I should have included in here. But I know British Columbia is currently debating, or the city of Vancouver is debating, fining gas stations or putting in a tax to gas stations that don't install charging stations.
Yeah, or empty parking lots that don't do it as well. Yeah.
So I know they're considering debating it right now.
It's a hefty tax too. It's like $10,000, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
and that. So, but anyways, do you guys, I mean, for the consumer who's looking for an electric vehicle, this has got to be a bit frustrating to like, you know, hey, we can go for a test drive. Yeah, I love this vehicle. And when can I get it? You know, it's going to be difficult.
Well, just as you guys both know, with our experience in having electric vehicles for some time, we knew that you can never really go to too many places and buy an electric vehicle off the lot. Whereas, of course, the normal car buyer is used to going to a lot and saying, if you got one in blue, I'll take that one. So that is a change with EVs that we've been aware of for quite some time, and we've changed our buying strategies based on that. It's going to be tough to get a person that's used to a regular gas vehicle purchase to get into that state of mind. I had a neighbor that came up to me and asked me about an electric vehicle, and I said, great. I gave them the information they wanted, and said, just be aware that it will be 6 months or longer before you can get your hand on the vehicle in the state that things are in today. And I talked to them a few weeks later and asked them if they had made a decision. And because they couldn't get it in under a year, they decided to get a hybrid and went with that decision. So there are things that again, this is education again. If you have somebody in your life that's interested in an EV, the moral of the story is look early and make your decision early so you can wait for that longer period of time. It'll be worth it in the end run, guaranteed. It's just whether or not your current vehicle will last that period of time is something you're going to have to consider. But that's the state we're in.
Yeah, and I would say just in general, like, I mean, supply chain is crazy across the board right now. As I was mentioning before the show, now some electronic components are showing lead times and normal lead times in the frame of 60 weeks. So more than a year is some of the lead times we're seeing for ordering parts, which is just absolutely insane. And you look at some car dealer lots today, you drive by some of the Toyota lots or the GM lots and stuff like that, and you'll see that they're mostly empty today. So they're having trouble getting cars in general. If you walk in there and you want a popular model of a particular vehicle, you're going to be waiting, whether it's gas or electric right now. Almost buying sight unseen is almost the normal now for any vehicle. Now, obviously, because of high gas prices and many other circumstances going on, EVs are even higher demand, and those wait lists are even longer than you would get. So most popular gas cars are in the 3-month wait period, while electric vehicles are in the 6-month to a year wait period. That being said, there are some good resources out there that do have some electric vehicle models like Plug and Drive. So for those that are willing to go out to an event, Plug and Drive is back up and running some of their events again, and traveling to different regions. And of course, they have their office in Toronto as well too. And they do have a few EV models on hand for people to test drive, including a few popular ones that are really hard to get a hold of. So I know they have an Ioniq 5 right now, which has a year-plus wait list, but they do have one for test drive. And so if people are looking for some EVs, Plug and Drive does have a few popular models that are hard to actually see at a dealership, but at least you'll be able to sit and touch and feel and look at one of those there. So,
yep, good tip.
Crazy times.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. Well, in relation to the picture here in the 0.15 kilowatt hour. Ontario.
Yes, indeed.
You're looking at, ultra
Ontario,
low electricity rate.
Ontario is looking at implementing a new ultra low overnight electricity rate. This was prompted to the Ontario Energy Board to look at and draft some information as to what would be required, what would cost the province to implement, and what the actual cost to the taxpayer would be, because of course it is in a provincially owned institution, And we as ratepayers and taxpayers here in Ontario actually own this, so that is going to translate to what we pay for our government. Again, this is something that is just under advisement now. They're looking at the numbers, they're looking at what it's going to cost, what it could be, what the price would be to consumers, but they're talking about getting the rate down to approximately 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Now, we as electric vehicle owners would celebrate a 2.5 cent kilowatt rate because, of course, that's when the vast majority of EV owners that have the ability to charge at home charge their vehicle. So that would certainly be a plus. Another bonus would be to industry that runs off shifts through the night. They would also benefit from this type of thing. And of course, everyone else is basically sleeping, so they're not going to benefit too much from it. But yeah, this is another look that the province is doing. This also could roll into almost an election promise type thing. Where it's the current government is looking at this and promoting it to the public that they're looking at this option. They're not saying it's coming tomorrow. They're just saying that we're looking at this option. So this could be almost considered an election promise as well, as we saw with the license stickers that recently rolled out, which actually came to fruition. This one, they're just starting to look at it, but yeah, I would be interested to see what you think if that is advantageous for the taxpayers of Ontario. If it makes sense to you, we'd like to see your comments in the video. If what you think about a 2.5 cent per kilowatt hour to the overnight version of the Ontario Electric Board, what they're looking at. So, what do you guys think? Does this make sense? Is this overkill? What are your thoughts?
I'm going to start off and say this makes massive sense. And I may be biased because I actually wrote to the OEB and told them to do this 5 years ago personally. So I personally wrote to the Ontario Energy Board and said, hey, this is something we should do. And it makes so much sense for a lot of reasons. Because right now, overnight, Ontario often has excess generating capacity. And oftentimes we are selling that power today at a loss to our neighbors so that we don't have to shut off our nuclear power plants. So we're actually losing money today on power overnight right now. And sometimes we're paying people like New York State to take our power at night. So why not subsidize and try to get people to move off grid overnight to try to do that? It might actually save us money. And the interesting part is if we can shift some of our demand from the middle of the day. So the middle of the day, we might be paying, we have our peak electricity rates, but oftentimes the cost of generating electricity during that time is actually higher than what we're paying to fix that demand response. So by shifting that power overnight, we actually might be saving money by doing this. This might actually help the taxpayer by doing the math. So, and you mentioned a few good usage cases there, Mark. Obviously, EV owners can program their cars to charge overnight. There are numerous businesses that can run overnight. Our company actually makes a product. It was just called thermal storage. It's very popular in California because California has also extremely low, ultra low overnight electricity rates. And what happens is a lot of facilities will actually put a product in their concrete slabs to heat up the concrete overnight, and so that during the day, that concrete then just radiates heat, and they don't need to heat their facility during the day. So at night, they can take advantage of these ultra low overnight electricity rates and basically use their concrete slab as a capacitive thermal storage device to do that. So there's certainly a lot of companies that will take advantage of this and use this excess capacity, and that'll help smooth out our demand curve in Ontario so that we can take better advantage of power that can run steady state, low cost versus high cost demand response. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
No, I agree very much so that this is something, we hear this all the time of the grid can't handle all the electric cars charging. But a lot of people are forgetting that most of the times that we charge is, off peak, and when there is not as much electricity being used by many, offices, manufacturing, schools, etc. So, and then now to give this incentive, I think, Eric, that's as you pointed out, we're selling this. Or sorry, we're paying to lose this to the New York State, when we have too much and we're might as well just give it away. But I think this is a great idea. I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate this for maybe a sale price for my studio. To have the bands that are up at 3 a.m. in the morning and want to record. Like, come on in. We got an ultra low electricity rate, so we'll pass that savings of 2.5 cents on to you. But I think, no, it's a great idea. You said you mentioned this like 5 years ago that you had written in about this, and geez, maybe the fine print there should be like, suggested by, Eric. Thanks very much. But I think this is a good, and Mark, actually, as you mentioned too, this could be a bit of a political move, just like kind of like the license stickers, I think are, but it is still, I think, a smart move as well. Get people to, really consider when they're charging their electric car, and especially for those who are new owners, I think are really going to start really considering that, because they probably in most cases bought the electric car to save from not having to pay so much on gas. So this is a great incentive for them to keep up on.
Yeah, even further. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. This next slide does not make any sense for the weather we had today, but for those looking forward to the upcoming winter season, I don't know why you are. But anyways, this company, Taiga, is really interesting company. And I had the pleasure of 2 summers ago, I guess, of actually taking their electrified jet ski out for a test run. And man, it was incredible, the power on that thing. It was actually quite scary, because the minute you hit that throttle, you better hold on. It goes. But this snowmobile is really, really looking cool, and 100-kilometer estimated range.
Yeah. So it might make sense in a couple of days when all of a sudden the weather flips back again. But I think, basically, this story may be a few weeks old, because Taiga has just started delivery of some of their snowmobiles, the Nomad, and they have other versions called the Atlas and the Eco. The Nomad is kind of their utility snowmobile, and then they have some higher performance versions as well too of this. And basically, they have a new electric powertrain and system, and it looks like they're going to be carrying this through a few different products. You mentioned the jet ski, which will probably be coming out soon as well too. They're probably starting limited deliveries right now, because they probably want to start slow once they get a few in customers' hands and stuff like that, and start ramping up production gradually to prepare for next season, basically coming up in the fall. But they started deliveries now, which is fantastic. These machines are quite impressive. It says 100 kilometers of range. My understanding is they have about a 24 kilowatt hour battery pack in these. They're not necessarily designed to be efficient. They're designed for performance and to do what they need. They also have DC fast charging as well, capability. So they have CCS charging on them. And they seem like pretty impressive machines, and their powertrain system seems pretty impressive as well. There's actually quite a few YouTube videos out now of a few people taking test drives of these in February. So it seems pretty good. And even the noise they make and stuff like that as well too, the much lower noise, much lower emissions and fumes and stuff like that as well too. In the winter, especially, you can really notice exhaust fumes much more. One of the videos I watched, the rider was actually riding in a pack of other snowmobiles that were gas powered, and he could really notice, like, oh man, I can smell those other gas And as soon as they drove off and he was by himself, he noticed a huge difference. He's like, you can really feel nature better in these machines now. You're not surrounded by this loud noise anymore. You can feel nature as you're going through.
Yeah, definitely. There's a number of pluses when it comes to that, and of course that's also going to play into the low maintenance as well. So vehicles will run longer with less maintenance because of less moving parts, and that will be a plus for the owners or possibly the resorts that own these to give to guests. So that will be another aspect. And of course, the fuel savings is going to be a big plus. Having a 100-kilometer range, I think, is quite good for these vehicles, especially if they're used from a central spot, like a resort or something, where they'll go do a loop and they'll come back and they'll plug in to the garage overnight, and then they're ready all to go again the next day. So I can definitely see this model will work for snowmobiling in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that London gets a whole lot of snow, because you mentioned about the DC fast charging, and I'm sure Don would be like, hey, we get these Nomad snowmobiles. There's another reason to get that level 3 charging, But yeah, this company is quite interesting. It's a young CEO. If I remember, his name is Sam, who is doing this, and good for him. He's really putting his best that he can forward on this. And like I mentioned too, with the jet ski was incredible. A lot of fun to go around on. And with this, I can imagine the same thing. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's interesting, Eric, when you mentioned as well about the gas fumes and him smelling that. That is one thing with my solar electric pontoon boat that I also notice. There's been some times when a regular boat passes by and you just smell it. You just notice the gas fumes right away. You become that much more sensitive to it. Yeah. All right. So this is another interesting, I've heard about this, and I'm curious on this with nuclear and the small modular reactors. You can definitely see size factor is a lot different on this.
Yeah. So one of the biggest costs today for building a nuclear reactor is the capital expenditure just to build it. The cost to build the facility is actually one of the biggest costs. So one of the things that these SMRs do, small modular reactors, is that they can actually build these off-site in a factory. You can actually now, in a sense, I don't know if mass produce is the right term, but you can actually produce these in a facility off-site, and then you can ship them to a location to actually build them. So they're actually small enough to be able to be done that way. And the advantages of that is now you can significantly reduce the cost of manufacturing this. The other big advantages of these now is these new technologies, because these SMRs are now using new nuclear technologies out there today. And I know with a lot of people, and even some of the listeners of the show, nuclear is going to be a trigger word or a dirty word for some people. But these new nuclear reactors have some new technologies in them that make them potentially very promising. Like some of these SMRs that Ontario Power Generation is looking to partner with GE Hitachi, and these reactors are able to actually run off of waste fuel. So they could potentially take waste fuel from the Darlington reactor facility and then reuse that waste fuel to run more power again, which actually makes the system more efficient. The other big advantage of these SMRs as well too is because of their size and their scale, they can also make them passive, which is a massive advantage. And what that means is today most nuclear reactors have to be actively cooled. And if they're not actively cooled, then they go into a fear of a meltdown. That's usually the biggest fear of different facilities. So like your Fukushima Daiichi, your 3 Mile Island, your Chernobyl, even today with the war in Russia and Ukraine today, there's big fears that the Chernobyl site was going to lose power because they wouldn't be able to actively cool that site. and which would be a disaster because that in some cases that fuel is still active in that reactor. But the beautiful thing about some of these SMRs is they can passively cool them, so that even if they lose power, they're able to still dissipate the heat in such a way that they'll never melt down, which makes them inherently safe. So they're able to run on waste fuel, and they're able to make these inherently safe, so that if a catastrophe ever does happen, the reactors should never go into meltdown. And on top of that, because of that, is the scale. Because they are smaller scale now, these can be shipped to potentially more remote locations as well in the future to service communities that might have difficulty getting power elsewise as well too. And they have technologies. This isn't just about generating electricity. These reactors can also be used to generate steam or hot water, and in some cases they can be used to create community heating and things like that as well. So you can use this to generate, like this is common in facilities in China today, or even in some places in Russia today use this as well too, where they have a central facility that generates heated water that actually heats the community. And so these SMRs could actually be used to generate that heat today. In China today, that's often done using coal-fired power plants. If you use an SMR to do that, that's obviously far cleaner than using coal. So,
Eric, we say small modular reactor, but are there different sizes of small, if you want to say, like that they could kind of scale it a little bit? So say a city of Kitchener compared to a city of Chatham, we would have different sort of energy needs. Could they almost like customize it for those locations?
Yeah, my understanding is there is different sizes of reactors, but also you can install different numbers as well too. So if a different facility requires it, you might install multiple numbers of these reactors as well, depending on the requirements.
Yeah, that would make sense. That you could just add a few of them as opposed to one.
Yeah.
So and that would scale up the amount.
That being said, the facility they're looking at Darlington is a 300 megawatt facility, which is still about a third of the size of the current reactors running at Darlington. So
still quite large, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the word nuclear waste always makes people uncomfortable, and it's been such a topic, hot topic of a discussion about what we do with this, and especially with the Bruce, that's come up quite a bit. But to hear that, hey, we can actually use this yet again, is going to be good. It's
I think the most impressive part of this submission is possibly using used fuel, being able to take some of that and continue producing power from the used fuel. I guess we'd have to see how efficient it is and how much there would be questions to be answered about it, but I'm looking forward to see what their findings are when Darlington installs one.
Mm-hmm. How many cycles do you think could be, so to speak, done with used fuel?
That I don't know, and of course, at some point, this facility is also going to have waste as well too. That is, so even though it can run off waste fuel from other facilities, there'll be an input and there'll be an output, and I don't know how many cycles it can do.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to down the road of what that actually could mean on something like that, and on that. But it's funny. Nuclear has always been for myself a little bit, not sure if it's still the best way forward that we should do with things. But Ontario is at least 50%, if not 55%, I think, nuclear. So it is something that we right now have to accept. But the key thing, I think, is the reuse of the waste is definitely a key thing that I think for a lot of people would definitely give them a lot more comfort, rather than just burying it.
Yeah, and you did mention, nuclear today in Ontario is 55% roughly of our power. That being said, the Pickering site and many of those reactors are getting old and are probably going to age out. We've actually already mothballed 2 of the 8 reactors at Pickering. And at some point, Bruce, they've been through a few upgrade projects, and I think Bruce is good for a while, the 8 reactors there. But at some point, they're going to age out as well, too. So Darlington is the newest. There's 4 reactors at Darlington. They are the newest of the reactors in Ontario, and they're probably good to about 2040 plus. But, we have to start thinking about, okay, we have over half of Ontario's capacity today is nuclear. How do we replace, and what do we do with that capacity in the future? So we need to start thinking about that.
Yeah, sure. All right. On our last slide, something of a little lighter note, and we'll do a little survey amongst the 3 of us. So Kia, they did this interesting sort of study, and they were talking about how the music that we listen to has a dramatic influence on our EV range. So yeah, it's kind of interesting on this whole thing. So Eric, what do you listen to when you're in driving? What's your tunes of choice?
Well, it actually depends on the mood I'm in. And I would say this is an interesting one. Does the music influence my driving, or does my driving influence the music that I pick? And I guess that depends on the mood I'm in. Is my overall mood, if I'm in the mood, sometimes I'll blast some good, AC/DC or something like that going down the road. And sometimes I'm a bit more aggressive when I'm driving like that. But I find sometimes when I'm traveling for work, like when I go down to Texas for work, one of my favorite things to do is when I'm driving down the I-20 in Texas, is I go on to the satellite radio and I go to the classical music channel, and I'll actually play classical music while I'm driving down I-20, and I find that just relaxing and nice because usually I'm a little, traveling is a little bit stressful, and it's nice just to listen to a bit of classical music just to smooth things out and kind of chill out. So
man, don't tell your Texas counterparts that. They'll be upset.
Until the 1812 overture comes on, Eric's good.
That's true. That's true.
Mark, what's your choice?
It's funny that Eric mentioned AC/DC. That's my favorite driving tunes are AC/DC. Absolutely love that heavier sound, and that's more than often than not. That would be my selection.
Okay. So what's interesting though is like, I think it's just a given. It's human nature. When we have something up tempo and we're driving, I think our peripheral vision would like to see the buildings, the trees, the pedestrians, like all that go by faster with the music. I think it's kind of synonymous that respect. And having something more mellow. You know what? The city keeps talking and putting in more speed reduction aspects of our roads. They should maybe consider that, piped in classical music to the cars that are coming through. Maybe will help to, deter speeders, bring them down a little bit. But myself, music of choice. As many of you guys know, I'm a huge Rush fan, and Rush definitely has some up-tempo type of stuff. That being said, there's a band called Porcupine Tree, and they have this great album where there's a song called Arriving Somewhere But Not Here. And it is that after a gig at 2 or 3 in the morning when you're driving home and the night sky is beautiful with stars, it's that perfect music because it's very Pink Floyd-y in the beginning, and you're just kind of cruising, and then all of a sudden it kicks into a beat, and you can just feel the car wanting to it just drives. You just want to go, and it's a really cool tune on that. So, but what I found interesting, they show the BPM, 111 BPM for classical music. And, the range expenditure of 22.48 miles was 7.7%, as opposed to the Weekend with Blinding Lights, which is 171 BPM and 23.6% range, that way, saying goodbye to. So I think that's just human nature. We just, we hear the song and we want our surroundings to kind of go with it.
Yeah. Actually, I was just gonna say one of the other songs I like to play is when I'm in an EV and talking about how Ontario's power is more than 50% nuclear. When on a nice day, I'll listen to Imagine Dragons, the song that's going I'm radioactive. I like a little blasting that with the windows down. But,
yeah.
And speaking of, you're mentioning traffic and people speeding and stuff like that. There was actually some jurisdictions, and I believe they're in the U.S. that were experimenting with putting grooves in the road, and if you drove at a certain speed, it played a music. But if you drove faster than a certain speed, it would actually create a very high, like a really not pleasing sound.
Oh wow,
that's inventive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The getting back to the old school vinyl and the groove.
Mm-hmm.
On that.
Groove on the road.
I will say, anyone who follows me on Twitter knows my Twitter is Red Bar Tesla. And of course, the first song when I picked up my Model 3, the first song I put on was Red Barchetta by Rush. And when it kicks into this middle section, it's just like, the first thing you want to do is just floor it, because the music totally makes you dun 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 dun, and it's just like you want to go, just get going, make it fast. Yep. It's fun.
I don't think that's something new. I think we've always known that up-tempo music will make us drive a little bit more aggressive, a little faster. It just seems to go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's interesting how music is such a driving factor in our lives. Ooh, that was bad.
Very good. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for that. Appreciate that information that we shared with the group tonight. If you haven't already, please press that like button. Press that subscribe. You'll be notified every time we add something new to the WREVA channel. You'll be notified first and can see what we've put out there. Let's go to shout-outs at the end of the show. Ian, any shout-outs from you this evening? Besides the Kitchener Rangers, which you've already mentioned.
Yeah, you know what? I will say I'll give one shout-out to the Raptors. They won a game. They could be eliminated like straight, and they did win a game. I'm not going to give a shout-out to the Leafs for that brutal 8-whatever loss it was to Tampa. But no, you know what? I hope with the Raptors they can win at least one more game, because you know what, they're not going down without a fight. That's great to see, and it's exciting for us up here. It's that's our sports team, just like the Jays. They won the World Series.
One team unites the country.
Yeah. And it's happened in my lifetime, unlike the Leafs. So,
Very good, very good. Eric, any shout-outs from you this evening?
Well, I guess on that same theme, I guess I'll give a shout-out to the Blue Jays, even though they unfortunately lost in extra innings today against Houston. They did win the series, and they're actually off to a strong start in April. They're 10 wins and 6 losses so far. So it's a good, strong start to the season. They have a good, strong, young team. So should be exciting to watch this season. So I'm a big baseball fan, and I'm looking forward to the season this year with the Blue Jays. So
very good, very good. Well, we'd like to thank you for watching this video, whatever time of day it is or what day it is. Thanks very much. And if you have any comments, please put them down below. Also, the articles we mentioned today will be in the show notes. So if you'd like to go see those articles and read them on your own time, please feel free to do so. And we will see you next month and get together and promote some EVs and some more electrifying news. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.